So let me walk you through a little bit about what we're doing in Nicaragua. We essentially have three distinct projects going on right now. The first, we're in the process of building a 500 ton per day mine. We're about 20% complete, that when we get into commercial production in the late summer of next year, we anticipate this being the highest grade open pit mine on the planet. We currently have a resource grade of about 7 grams in the open pit, but we've been putting out some infill numbers, inclusive of this morning, that are showing grades substantially higher than 7. And I'll walk you through later in the presentation about why we actually think that's going to hold up. Secondarily, we have a single rig right now that's focused on near mine exploration, about 4 kilometers south of the mine that we're building. Only focused on step out and true greenfields exploration work. We announced a fairly material discovery about 2 weeks ago, where we hit over 40 grams a ton gold, so a little over 1 troy ounce per ton gold, 35 meters from surface. Everything that we're talking about right now is open pittable. And then finally, we do think that we're sitting on an orogenic gold mining camp. We currently have 140 square kilometers of highly prospective ground in Nicaragua that has been grossly underexplored. And then when the mine turns on in late summer of next year, we're going to start investing in regional exploration activities to show that this is going to be a material deposit and potentially mining camp that will be around for generations. So a little bit about the company itself. So I'm the CEO, and actually that's an important title because for the last 5 years of my career, I had an interim title before my CEO name. There's a reason for that. I also work for a multi-billion-dollar private equity fund called Wexford Capital. And I took over as interim CEO in this particular iteration in March. And then the data started to come out on what this deposit is really about. And in August, about 6 weeks ago, I said, you know what? This looks like an opportunity, and I'm going to dedicate my career to do this. So why would somebody give up a cush job at a private equity fund to go work for a 2-bit junior gold mining company? Well, first of all, it is our team. So we have a great operating team who have built 3 mines in the Americas over the course of the last 7 years, independently through their EPCM firm. So Jesse Munoz runs our operations. And we also have a really good exploration team that has been on this project in northern Nicaragua, San Albino, really since the inception of this back in 2009. But more importantly, it's the data that started to come out. So I took over as CEO, interim CEO, I should say, in March. And these are a subset of news releases, and I encourage you to look at the news release that we put out this morning as well, which was pretty extraordinary. But May 6, 2019. So when I took over as interim CEO in March, I was going back at some of the historical drilling that was done on the project. And in 2011, in the completely greenfields location, a discovery was made where they hit 3 meters at over 2 ounce material, over 60 grams a ton, sitting about 30 meters from surface. Now, does anybody know when that hole was followed up on next? So this was drilled 8 years ago. That hole was followed up on about 12 hours after I took over as interim CEO. So for a period of about 8 years, there was a philosophy within this company not to invest in exploration. They were building a mine. They were trying to bootstrap this into a vehicle where the pittance of cash flow that would come out would eventually go and finance other exploration activities. A program and a plan that is commonplace in our industry, but very seldom works. What we bring to the table to have the ability to have real capital to be put into this operation, although in a prudent fashion, is the ability to go and invest in what this project's about. So you can see over here, when that drill hole came back 2 months later from the assay lab, 380 grams ton gold over 1 meter. That's over 13 troy ounces of gold. That could easily be mined open pittable. You see over an ounce, 36 grams over at a greenfields exploration level. And then 3 weeks ago, September 4th, this was the first time that we started to do an infill program based on a reinterpreted geological model over at our mine, over at San Albino. So this was put together by, previously in 2015, by a management team that didn't really have experience building mines. And one of the first things that you need to do when you're actually building a mine is understand where the gold is. It seems kind of commonplace to say that, but the resource model and the geological model that was put together was there to try to impress investors rather than to try to build a mine. So when we took over this company late last year, the first thing that we did was reinterpret the model, and those are the very first holes that came out about 3 weeks ago, where we hit 60 grams gold, over 3 meters true width, but this was a deep hole. This was 4 meters from surface. This is an open pit that's within one bench from surface that effectively we can take out an excavator today and start mining it. So what exactly is San Albino? We're in northern Nicaragua. By the way, Nicaragua is a lovely country. The government is friendly, supportive of mining. It is safe. We're in the process of closing down a mine in Mexico. Mexico is a country that is not safe. I felt uncomfortable going down to the country of Mexico. What used to be a 7 times annual trip for me to go down to Sinaloa became once a year maximum, just out of fear of personal safety and security. Nicaragua is not that. You can walk around 2 o'clock in the morning, no problem. The community is quaint. It's nice where we are. We're not actually all that remote. El Jicaro, the nearest town, has about 4,000 people living in it. Almost universally, they're in favor of this mine. So we do have real, true social license to go and build this operation. By the way, Nicaragua is also in the news. So B2 Gold, the mid-tier mining company, is vending off their Nicaraguan assets to a great group of people that run Calibre. So we wish them all the luck in the world. They raised $104 million from investors to go and advance the El Limón and La Libertad projects to the south of where we are. The last time there was publishable economics over at San Albino was a 2015 PEA on the basis of a geological and resource model that we don't fully endorse. But a few of these key aspects. Upfront capital expenditures, US $21.1 million. There's been some scope changes to the project itself. So on a pure apples to apples basis, that number is more like US 25.5 today. We're also doing this very aggressive infill program over 7,200 meters that will add about $2.5 million US dollars to the CapEx. So the nut to crack to deliver our first project, the 500 ton per day mine, is approximately US 28 million. On top of that, we are going to be doing some resource delineation drilling after our infill program is complete, following up on some of those holes that we hit over at Los Conchitas, and that will probably add another US $2 million to our budget. So the real nut to crack is US 30 million. The company raised US $20 million, so Canadian $27 million in the form of a backstop rights offering that Wexford Capital backstopped, and that closed in July. So there right now is sufficient capital to move us the majority of the way through our development schedule, but there is going to be a minimum of a US $10 million financing requirement no later than February of next year. You can see where we stack up. What drives this project? It's grade, and certainly IRR with respect to the limited CapEx that's required to get this up and running. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of open pit only mines in the world, this will be the highest grade open pit only mine in the world when this turns on and reaches commercial production in the late summer of next year. You can compare this to some big boys out here, whether it's Kumtor over at Kyrgyzstan, 5.5 grams. We will be well in excess of our resource grade of 7 grams when this opens up. Now, what exactly do we have over on the exploration front? You can see that little square over there. That's our San Albino deposit that sits on just over 3.5 square kilometers of ground. We are drilling also to the south in that little kind of light blue square below that over at Los Conchitas. So very compact. And then our land package obviously is contiguous, 140 square kilometers of ground. The full 23 kilometers of strike length on our deposit is mineralized. Whether there are additional economic deposits on that strike, we don't know. We haven't really drilled regionally yet. But certainly from a mineralization perspective, the gold continues not only along those 23 kilometers, but frankly, it goes off our ground in either direction. When this company picked up this ground in 2009, there was very little prospecting done. Every single one of those dots, if you can squint your eyes a little bit, is a geochemical sample in excess of 1 gram material. And you can see what's happened over the last 8 years with a very successful prospecting team that we were able to demonstrate that the full belt is indeed mineralized with gold. Now, a little bit on our exploration activities. So again, project number one, we're building our 500 ton per day mine. We're going to start mining in February. We'll be in commercial production late summer of next year. As soon as our infill program is done in November or December this year, we're pulling 3 of our 4 rigs off of San Albino to do a resource delineation over at Las Conchitas, with the objective by the end of next year to have an integrated resource between Las Conchitas and San Albino. In 2021, to demonstrate the economic feasibility of expanding our production from 500 tons a day to 1,000 tons a day, to be in production at 1,000 tons a day by 2022. And if these grades hold up to where I expect them to hold up, that will equate to over 100,000 ounces a year at some of the lowest cost ounces on the planet. And then by 2022, to show that this indeed is a regional exploration orogenic gold mining camp. Now, what makes this asset unique is that 300 million years ago, this looked very similar to other orogenic systems. In fact, our previous speaker had one of those. So very much like the Canadian Abitibi, a series of vertical veins. But 300 million years ago, there was tectonic movement that essentially tilted our asset on its side by 65 to 85 degrees. So what makes this project unique and unlike anything that I know of elsewhere on the globe is that it makes it amenable to open pit mining. Low CapEx, low OpEx, and the ability to access this ore without putting hundreds of millions of dollars of upfront capital in order to start production. There is no other deposit on the planet that looks like what we have over in Nicaragua. And with that, I'll open the door for any questions. So the last metallurgical study was complete in 2016, which was the third pass of our met work, all associated with the San Albino deposit, so the actual mine. We drilled, I think, around 8,000 meters of PQ core that we put into the laboratory. We determined that there's no refractory material. Number one, this is free mining. There's a large component that will be reporting to gravity. Recoveries will be, depending on the types of materials that we're using, to the low to mid 90% range through gravity and carbon and leach system. The host rock is in a graphitic schist, so there was, back when we first got involved in 2014-15, there was a question mark about whether this would be a preg-robbing type material. It's not, so it's not activated carbon, and we really are able to deal with the graphitic nature of the host rock pretty easily. Now, in all fairness, we haven't done any metallurgical drilling over at Las Conchitas, so the exploration group. So obviously, in order for us to expand the mine from 500 tons a day to 1,000 tons a day, there's a lot of engineering work, inclusive of metallurgical work, that needs to be done. The ore and the host rock kind of look more or less similar, so we don't really see any nasties or fatal flaws for an expansion plan, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done outside of the mine area. In the mine area, we're pretty comfortable in terms of what the network is. So nothing that will report to nasties, but there is gold associated with some arsenopyrite type minerals, but nothing that's eye-opening. So from definitely we're focused on Las Conchitas next. When I was talking about earlier that there was a limited amount of capital that was spent by our predecessors, we do believe in being cautious with our capital as well. I don't want to overstate that everything is going to be invested in just because I work for a billionaire. The reality is that to get San Albino up and running, and eventually demonstrate that this can have a material level of production, so let's call it 100,000 ounces at that level, needs to be financed right now. The stuff that's going on regionally, other than mapping and sampling and geochemical work, there's a lot that needs to be done, but if we need to wait a year and a half, 2 years to start financing it, that's actually okay. I think if we're able to demonstrate the feasibility of those first 2 projects, 500 ton per day mine, execute well without screwing it up, and then show that we can economically expand the mine to 1,000 tons a day, then we can get around to the regional stuff starting at the very end of next year. So after the rights offering was complete, Wexford took 72% of the 27 million Canadian deal, and then they own just under 56% of the company. Personally, in terms of shares that I own and options, I think I'm just under 5% of the company. Normally I don't talk about undisclosed shareholders, but he actually asked me to. So Paul Stevens, who's a very wealthy and value investor extraordinaire in the tech and resource space in Hawaii and California, he owns just under 7% of the company, and then the rest really are bibs and bobs. So really no major institutions other than a few small ones that are involved. Sure. Mm-hmm. So last year there was quite a bit of civil unrest that was put down with violence, right? I've been down to site 6 times since things calmed down in May. The last time I was there 5 weeks ago was the first time that I actually saw tourists come back. So the economy was pretty devastated. The tourism industry basically went down to zero. What we noticed with respect to our project is that anytime that we need a minor permit amendment, what used to take weeks or months now takes days or weeks. So that's been good for us. Everything is pretty calm. You can go down to Managua. The police look calm. The people look calm. So I think they've put that behind them. Elections will be early the year after next, so it wouldn't be surprising to see things start up again. But even when the major unrest happened almost principally in the capital city, Managua, and a nearby city called Masaya, which is about a 5-hour drive away from our mine. We never really saw anything up in Nueva Segovia, where we are by the Honduras border at all. So there really wasn't any direct impact, but it was an unfortunate, and that's being a euphemism. It was beyond unfortunate what happened last year, but it does seem like they've gotten over it.
The Chinese still building it now?
I doubt it. So. All right. Thank you very much.